The wind howled across the open plains, dragging lines of dust over the sunbaked earth. The sky was bruised with streaks of gray, and the scent of gunpowder still lingered in the air long after the echoes of violence had faded. Near a lonely stretch of fence, the rancher stood still, his hat pulled low, his coat flapping like a torn flag in the storm. His name was Ethan Cole, a man whose silence spoke more than a dozen lawmen's shouts. He wasn't the kind of man who looked for trouble, but trouble had a way of finding him. The cattle were scattered that morning, hoofprints leading toward the canyon, some of them fresh, some smudged with blood. A rustler's trail, but this wasn't just theft. It was personal. Ethan's ranch had been hit twice this month, and every time, a new mark was left carved into his barn door, a snake coiled around a blade. The mark of the Black Vultures, an outlaw gang that left no witnesses. He swung up onto his horse, the chestnut mare restless beneath him, and rode into the low hills. He didn't look back. The ranch had long lost its warmth. His wife buried 3 winters ago, his son vanished in the border wars. All he had left was the land, and that land was bleeding. By noon, he found the first sign. A torn saddlebag snagged on a mesquite bush, a patch of black leather with a silver buckle engraved with the same cursed insignia. He touched it, his jaw tightening. The wind carried faint voices. Male laughter. He followed the sound like a wolf on a scent. Beyond the ridge, a campfire burned low. 3 men lounged around it, their rifles leaned against a rock. One was sharpening a knife, another cleaning his boots, and the third, young, nervous, twitching, kept looking over his shoulder. They hadn't seen him yet. Ethan slid off his horse, crouched low, and advanced through the sagebrush. When the knife sharpener turned his head, Ethan moved. He grabbed the first man by the collar, slammed him against the rock, and drove his fist into his gut. The second man reached for his gun, but Ethan was faster. A kick to the wrist, a crack of bone, and the pistol flew. The third ran. Ethan drew his revolver and fired once. The echo faded with the thud of a body collapsing into dust. He dragged the survivors to the fire. Their eyes were wide, the smell of fear stronger than the smoke. He crouched before them, the revolver dangling loose in his hand. One of them spat blood and sneered. "You don't know who you're messing with, rancher." Ethan stared. His voice was calm, too calm. "I reckon I do." The man laughed weakly. "You think you can scare the vultures? You think you can stop what's coming?" Ethan's eyes flicked to the branded leather patch again. The snake coiled around a blade. He'd seen that mark before, years ago, burned into the chest of the man who shot his son. That memory struck like lightning through his chest. His hand trembled once, then steadied. "Where's your boss?" No answer, only silence and defiance. Ethan stood up, holstered his gun, and walked toward the campfire. He picked up a branding iron half buried in the coals. The end glowed orange, spitting sparks as he lifted it. The men's eyes widened. One started to crawl backward, muttering, "Please, I beg you." Ethan turned slowly, the iron still glowing in his hand. Begging didn't sit well with him, not from men who'd burned homes and butchered ranch hands for fun. He stepped closer until the firelight carved his face into hard lines. His voice was low. "You want mercy? Then speak truth." The knife sharpener swallowed hard. "He's in Red Hollow, South Ridge. He's gathering the rest. They got a wagon full of rifles, stolen from the fort. They're coming for you next." Ethan pressed the iron into the dirt, letting the hiss fill the silence. He turned back to his horse without another word. The second man called after him, voice shaking. "You'll never make it alone. He'll kill you slow." Ethan mounted up. "Not if I find him first." That night, the moon rose pale over Red Hollow. The canyon was a scar in the land, deep and jagged, where the vultures nested in the cliffs. Ethan rode until his horse's breath came in foggy bursts, then dismounted and tied her to a scrub pine. He moved on foot, step by step, through the narrow pass that opened into the outlaw camp. Fires burned below, dozens of them, and the sound of laughter and clinking bottles echoed up the canyon walls. He crouched behind a boulder, eyes narrowing. There were at least 15 men. He counted their rifles, their sentries, the shadows that moved near the wagons. Then he saw him, the leader. A tall figure in a long black coat, scar running down his cheek, the same snake and blade tattoo curling around his neck. Ethan's breath caught. He knew that face. The man's name was Mason Creed. The same outlaw who'd ambushed his wagon years ago, the one who'd taken his son and left him for dead. The same devil whose laughter haunted Ethan's nights. For a long moment, Ethan stood frozen in the dark, rage and memory clawing through him. Then the decision came, quiet, sharp, final. He loaded his rifle and stepped into the open. The first shot cracked like thunder. The sentry dropped before his scream could rise. Panic rippled through the camp. Ethan fired again, hitting a second man clean through the chest. He moved forward as the outlaws scrambled for cover. Bullets whined past his head, sparking off stone. He rolled behind a crate, reloaded, and kept firing. When his rifle clicked empty, he drew his revolver and charged through the smoke. He moved like a storm, each shot measured, deliberate, merciless. Men fell one after another. He didn't stop, not until Mason Creed was the last one standing. Creed had drawn his weapon, but Ethan shot it clean out of his hand. The outlaw stumbled back, clutching his burned wrist. His smirk flickered, replaced by something that looked like fear. "You again," Creed said. "Thought I left you bleeding out in the sand years ago." Ethan stepped closer. "You did, but you forgot to finish the job." Creed laughed hoarsely. "You think killing me's gonna bring him back? Your boy screamed my name, you know that. Screamed before he." Ethan's gun fired before the sentence ended. Creed fell backward, the words dying in his throat. Ethan stood over him, smoke curling from the barrel. For a long time, he didn't move. The night was quiet except for the crackle of fire and the slow, dying breaths of the outlaw. When it was over, he didn't look triumphant. He just looked empty. The rage that had fueled him burned out, leaving only silence. He holstered his gun, turned toward the canyon ridge, and started walking. By dawn, the lawman had arrived, following the smoke. Sheriff Dunn found Ethan sitting by the fire, staring at nothing. Bodies lay scattered around him. The sheriff's deputy whispered, "What in God's name happened here?" Ethan didn't answer. He just stood, brushed the dust from his coat, and walked to his horse. Dunn stepped forward. "Cole, this is bad business. You went and started a war." Ethan paused, one boot in the stirrup. The war was already here. He rode off without another word. Days passed, then weeks. The story spread through every saloon and town square. The lone rancher who'd wiped out the black vultures in one night. Some called him a hero, others a killer. But Ethan didn't care what they called him. He didn't return to his ranch right away. Instead, he rode through the borderlands, silent as the ghosts he carried. One evening, he reached an abandoned cabin near the river. The roof sagged, the door half broken, but inside he found something that made his breath catch, a small wooden box hidden under a loose floorboard. Inside it was a locket, tarnished with age, and a folded piece of paper. The handwriting was messy but familiar. It was his son's. Ethan unfolded it with trembling hands. It wasn't long, just a few lines. "Father, if you find this, I'm sorry I couldn't come back. They took me south, said they'd kill you if I ran. I tried to fight. I hope you forgive me." Ethan sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in his hands. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a sigh. He'd spent years chasing ghosts, and now one had finally spoken. That night, he buried the locket near the riverbank and built a small cairn of stones over it. He didn't pray. He just stood there until the stars came out, his hat pressed to his chest. Then he whispered into the wind, "It's done, boy, it's done." He turned back toward the horizon. The morning light stretched across the land like a promise. The ranch waited. The cattle still needed tending, the fences fixing, the soil turning. Maybe that was all he had left to do, keep the land alive, even if he couldn't save the people who once lived on it. When he rode home, the valley seemed quieter, the air softer. The mark on the barn door was gone, burned away and replaced with a fresh coat of paint. The dust settled behind him as he dismounted, his boots hitting the earth with the weight of every memory he carried. Inside the barn, a young boy worked the hayloft. Ethan froze. For a second, his heart stopped. The boy turned, face half hidden by the morning sun. He wasn't his son, just one of the neighbor's hands come to help. But still, for a heartbeat, Ethan saw what might have been, the life that could have been. He walked out to the porch, sat on the steps, and watched the sun climb over the horizon. The land stretched wide before him, golden and silent. For the first time in years, the wind didn't sound like a ghost. It sounded like peace. But deep down, he knew peace was fragile out here. The West was never done testing its men. He holstered his revolver again, not out of fear, but habit. The world might change, but outlaws always came back, different faces, same hunger. As the light brightened, a lone vulture circled high above, black wings cutting through the dawn. Ethan tilted his head, watching it drift farther and farther until it disappeared into the sky. Then he stood, placed his hat over his heart, and whispered the words that had become his prayer. "Please, I beg you, let it end here." The wind carried his words away across the plains, over the hills, and into the silence of the west, a land that remembered every man's sins and forgave none.